Hello, everyone. I'm Joe Flick with the Montana State Library, and I'm here with our Montana State Librarian, Jennie Stapp. And we're going to go through a few things today at the March edition of our website chat. So let's just get caught up on a few things. If you are ever planning to watch the website chat but not able to attend live, you should know that we gather all of these recordings into a album on our Vimeo channel, and that's the actual address of the album. You can always just email me if you're looking for that link. I'm happy to send it to you. The State Library does have a channel on Vimeo, and all of this, our album and all of our other albums, are kind of organized onto the channel. So it's pretty easy. Actually, quite a few people watch the website chat asynchronously after we've recorded it. And I do, since the material that Jennie shares with us each month is very often time sensitive, I make every effort to get it posted online within a couple hours of the website chat. We're also making available a captioned version of our videos. Those are on YouTube, and you can go to the Vimeo channel, find the video you want, and there'll be a link right there to the YouTube version. So if you've been going to Vimeo, but for some reason you like to watch the videos with captions, these are the auto-generated captions. We're now doing that, so that might be helpful to you. And let's see what we're going to, one thing about coming up training, I always have to tell you about what's going on with training. We are doing on April 25th in Wolf Point an all-day 6-hour training on how to get along with your county or city. It's basically called Working Together, and we've hired the local government center, Dan Clark from the local government center, to develop and now present these trainings. He did it for the first time for us last September in Bozeman. We had a really great turnout and terrific feedback. People really thought it was helpful. Dan did a great job of kind of putting forth this information from the point of view of how your city and county looks at library services, but also he did his research on library law in Montana. It's a great foundation for trustees and directors. Information you might already know if you're a director, but certainly need to know. So I really encourage you to look at coming to Wolf Point or Big Fork. Now, the Tamarack Federation is hosting this training for us as part of their meeting in Big Fork, but you don't need to be a member of the Tamarack Federation to attend this training. Actually, don't need to be a member of a federation to attend any federation trainings, but Big Fork is really, it's a beautiful site where they're meeting, and you are welcome to go, and they're making arrangements to provide, like a meal for people while you're there. It starts in the afternoon of May 11th and then concludes on May 12th in the morning. So if you need hotel accommodations or any of that, just contact me and I'll make sure you get the information to get the good rate at the Marina Cay in Big Fork, so you can be with all your library buddies there. It'll be really, really good training, I think. And I'm just very happy that Dan is available to do 2 more of these sessions for us. And all you have to do is log into the library directory. Now, if you're in the Tamarack Federation, don't bother to register in the library directory. Wait for your information from Kim Crowley and just register with her. You don't need to register twice. And that's the important information about training coming up real soon. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Jennie, where she's going to give us a little update on what's going on with the plans to develop a foundation for the State Library, and then talk about some preparation she's doing for the conversations with the commission session at MLA next month. So Jennie, I'll pass things over to you. Let's see.
Thanks, Joe. And I too want to encourage you to think about attending that training with Dan Clark. Everything I've heard about that training is that he just does a really, really stupendous job. And of course, our ability to work with our local governments is really critical to our success as libraries. And so the more information and resources we can have to making that work successful, the better. So encourage you to take advantage of that training opportunity.
Get your trustees to go if you can at all. He has a really nice packet that he hands out too, with all the information about important AG decisions and rulings and library law, and it's just he really did a great job for us, and I'm delighted to give him a little more work, and I'm glad that he was willing to go to the faraway corners of the state so we could expose some more people to it.
Yep, absolutely. Great. So I want to make sure you're looking at a screen that has the Montana State Library Commission meeting materials from their February 14th meeting.
Yes, that's what we see. Yep.
Okay. Well, before we get started with that material, I did want to give you an update on where we are with our effort to form a Montana Libraries and Information nonprofit. For those of you who haven't heard me talk about this in the past, this effort really began a little over a year ago as the State Library Commission was thinking about our strategic goals and wanting to have some more opportunity to play a proactive role in funding for Montana libraries. The Montana information community wanted to be able to have some ability to manage some of the volatility that we were seeing in the public sources of funding. That discussion began a study that we did over the course of last spring and summer around the idea of forming some kind of foundation or nonprofit to support financially the work that we do. Initially, we were talking about this as a foundation with an endowment, and that may very well be what we end up forming, but with some advice from some colleagues within the nonprofit community, including Ned Cooney, who we've worked with through the Library Association a number of times, led us to believe that we shouldn't narrow our focus at this point in time, that we should just focus our thinking on this idea of a nonprofit and let our fundraising and funding policies determine what kind of nonprofit we form. So that's what we've started talking about over the last several months. The commission last August decided to appropriate some monies from the State Library Trust to the effort of forming this nonprofit, and recognizing that no one on the commission nor our staff have any kind of expertise in going about forming this kind of entity, decided to use that appropriation to hire a consultant that can help us with that effort. We hired Ned Cooney to help us draft a request for proposal that we used to solicit proposals from consultants to help us do that work. That process was a little bit delayed due to the funding situation that the state found itself in over the course of the fall. But over the last couple of months, we've gone through that procurement process, and I'm very excited to announce that our review committee last week reviewed the responses that we received to that procurement, and we are currently in contract negotiations with Library Strategies out of St. Paul, Minnesota. We hope that they will work with us as that consultant to help us do that work. If you're not familiar with Library Strategies, they're actually found in the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library organization. They themselves a nonprofit, and they're in a very unique situation where they have this kind of consulting expertise on how to form and run nonprofits, how to do strategic planning, and a variety of different kinds of library consulting. They actually offer that consulting service, and then the money that they generate through that program goes back into their Friends of the St. Paul public libraries. So a really unique model, and we're really fortunate to, I hope, be able to take advantage of their expertise. We hope that we will be under contract by the end of this month, and that some of their staff will actually be at the Library Association conference next month to meet with the State Library Commission as well as all of you as we begin to explore what it means to form a nonprofit. Again, the kind of makeup and structure of that will be determined. The contract length that we're talking about right now is 18 months, and we hope that after 18 months we'll essentially have a turnkey nonprofit, ideally with an executive director hired, with all of the legal requirements finalized and filed, with marketing and branding done, with fundraising plans and strategies in place, with a fundraising board recruited, and actual fundraising efforts underway. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity for us to think about. A couple of points I always like to make when I'm talking about the nonprofit is it's not intended to compete in any way, certainly with the Library Association itself. It's not intended to be a professional association. It's not intended to do the work that MLA does, and we hope, in fact, that it might be able to in the future enhance financially the work of the Library Association. It's not intended to compete with local libraries, friends, and foundation groups. Our goal would be to think about how we can fund much of the work that we do at the State Library and that goes on in Montana libraries at the statewide level. Think of things like the OCLC Group Services Contract, the Montana Shared Catalog, Montana Library to Go, and those other kinds of statewide projects. If we can find ways to fund those kinds of statewide efforts, then we hope that it will enhance the abilities of local libraries and local friends and foundations to fund the work that goes on at the local community level. And so we see this much in the same way that we support our infrastructure, our technological infrastructure. We see the foundation supporting a statewide scalable financial infrastructure for libraries in the information community. So that's where we are with that. I think we're just about ready to take this next leap forward, and I think it'll be really, really exciting. And I think we've got just a great group with Library Strategies to help lead that effort. And I know that Joe has posted that if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. I'll pause right there and ask if there are any questions about where we are with the nonprofit.
And I kind of referred to it as a foundation, but that isn't really, whether or not it is a foundation isn't determined yet. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly right, Joe. It may, in fact, be a foundation, but with the advice of Ned Cooney, he suggested that we not limit our view of what this might be at this point in time, to ultimately let the board of this nonprofit decide exactly what form they want to take, largely informed by the kinds of projects they intend to fund, how they intend to fund them, how they intend to fundraise to support the work of this nonprofit.
So I just thought I should clear that up since I was the one who made that confusing statement. So well, it's good.
Initially, that's exactly what we were talking about. So
yeah. So yeah. Keeping it, yeah. So yeah, there's one comment in the chat box from Jeannie saying it's a very exciting prospect, and this is something your people are welcome to contribute ideas to, and it's not something we're going to do at the State Library all by ourselves. We're really looking for a lot of input.
Yep, and I want to acknowledge and thank Jeannie. Jeannie served on the review committee who helped review the responses to the procurement that we went through. And her familiarity with foundations was very, very valuable. We also had someone from the Montana Community Foundation help us score, as well as Leslie Maudreau, the director of the Billings Public Library Foundation, and some of our staff, all involved in lending expertise to that effort. Again, as I said, we don't have that kind of expertise on staff here at the State Library or on the commission, and so we were grateful to be able to lean into people within the library and foundation community who brought that expertise in helping us to review and ultimately select a respondent. So we're grateful for that. Once we get to the point of recruiting for the board of this nonprofit, and some of these details will have to be worked out. What I think will probably happen is we'll have sort of a startup steering committee that may morph into ultimately the nonprofit board. We will certainly reach out to the library community to engage people within the community to help serve on those committees to continue to inform that work as it goes forward. Again, one of the things that we're most cognizant about is that we do this in a way that is collaborative and not competitive within the fundraising community that exists here in Montana. So, and one of the things that I think Library Strategies brought to our attention was the need to be sure that we're collaborating with the philanthropic community in Montana. And so we're grateful for that expertise as well. So I want to talk a little bit about data and reporting. And I'm afraid this is going to be a little bit dry, but it's something that's very, very important to us here at the State Library. We hope it's important to you. And I want to talk about it today because it will lead into some discussion that we want to have during the Conversations with Commission session at the Library Association Conference. That session is first thing Thursday morning. Does that start at 9:30, Debbie? I think that's what the time that the first sessions start on Thursday morning. The Conversations with the Commission, if you've never attended, is always a great opportunity for the State Library Commission to meet with and hear from the library community and trustees who are at the association conference about needs that are going on within your communities that the State Library Commission should think about, and a chance for the Commission to share with all of you the important things that are going on within the State Library. Last year we talked a lot about this idea that was just in the forming stages around funding and the nonprofit foundation. We'll certainly, as I said, have a chance, we hope, to meet with Library Strategies during that session. But the other thing we want to talk about is the kinds of data and reporting that the State Library prepares and shares, and what kinds of information we should be sharing that's most meaningful to our commission and to the library community. So I wanted to share some information with you about the reporting that we currently do, so you have some idea, and then plant a seed for you to be thinking about over the next few weeks about what other kinds of things you might want to know about the work that's going on within the State Library. If you've attended any of our meetings or trainings, you know we talk a lot about data and data metrics and inputs and outputs and sharing your story and all of those kinds of buzzwords, all about reporting and data and really communicating the impact of the work that we do. So I started here at our State Library Commission page. Every other month when the State Library Commission meets, they get a number of reports from the State Library. They get our financial report, and then they get reports from each of the divisions within the library. And so I'm just going to share one or two of those with you so you have an idea of what they look like. These have morphed and changed significantly over time. The commission used to just see sort of statistical reports. So for example, how many libraries our consultants visited within a reporting period, how many different kinds of trainings were offered. But the statistical information really didn't give the commission a sense of the so what, the impact of that work that was going on. And so as you've heard us talk about, we've adopted more of a logic model approach to thinking about our reporting, where we're explaining to the commission at a project level the kinds of work that we're doing, the inputs that are necessary to conduct that work, how we measure the output of that work, but more importantly, the outcome and ultimately the impact of those various projects. So here's an example here about the site visits that our staff do. You can see information about the staff that are involved, our state library consultants, Pam, Lauren, and Suzanne. The outputs that we would report include the number of trips, miles, the number of people they work with, etc., and then the outcomes and impacts of that kind of work. A couple of things I'll point out in the reporting. We try to highlight for the commission because, you know, this is a 10-page report and it's just for one of our programs. We try to use some color coding for our commission to highlight things that we really want to draw their attention to. So green indicates that the work's proceeding as we anticipate. Yellow means that something might be delayed, but it's not necessarily of concern for the commission. Red means that something is of concern and the commission may need to take action. For example, we've lost staff or funding, or priorities have shifted in such a way that we may not be able to complete the work. And then blue is something new that's been added. So the commission sees these kinds of reports every other month. You can see that our library development division is going along largely as planned. If you look at the digital library work plan, you'll see a little bit more in red and some more yellows in here. Of course, the digital library was the division that was impacted by largely by the budget cuts that we took this last year, and so much of their work was impacted, and we used the color coding as a way to draw attention to those concerns for the commission. You know, some of these projects are of more interest to some of the commissioners than others. We think the commissioners read through all of this, but some of it will be of more special interest than might be for others, and that's fine. We are asking the commission to help us evaluate the effectiveness of this kind of reporting and other kinds of reporting that they might like to know from the state library. And so I just want to share with you another little spreadsheet that we've developed for the State Library Commission that outlines a lot of the reporting systems and data that we collect for a variety of different purposes to get feedback from the commission and the library community about how we might better make use of this data, maybe streamline some of our reporting, make use of the data in multiple ways to support different reporting needs. So this spreadsheet, it too is available on the State Library Commission website, has links to the variety of different reports that we are required to pull together. So the commission reports link to the reports I just showed you. We have our annual report that we're required by statute to prepare and share with the governor's office. Our Library Services Technology Act report, which we're required to prepare annually for the Institute of Museum and Library Services on how we've spent our LSTA funds. In the past, we've done reports to the various federations for federation meetings. Our Natural Resource Information System does reports to the funders of that program. We have statistics that we have to prepare for the legislature every other session. We are required by statute to prepare a report on our Montana Land Information Act activities and so forth. So there's a wide variety of different kinds of reports. Of course, they all have their own formats and systems that we use. We report on a variety of different types of information, like the activity that's done, staff hours, whether the expenditure is involved, and so forth. But these are largely disparate reports that require staff time to pull together. And interestingly, none of the reports with the exception of the work that we're trying to do for our commission, really focus on the impact or the outcomes of the work that we do. They are largely input and output driven. And so that's something that we're sort of cognizant of. We really don't know how effectively these reports communicate the value and impact of the work that we do. As I said, there's more information here about the plans that we're required to provide, the systems that we use to track the data that we use then to prepare the reports, different kinds of data metrics that we either gather on a regular basis or have the ability to gather pretty readily from the different kinds of systems that we have access to, like the shared catalog system, for example, or our human resources system or the state funding system. The feedback that we're asking for from the commission and ultimately from the library community is, what do you want to know about the health and success of the state library? What does that look like from your perspective? From the commissioner's perspective, you know, they're telling us obviously they want to know about the financial health of the agency. They want to know about the satisfaction of the staff that work for the agency. They want to know that the resources that go into the agency are being used effectively, and so forth. From a librarian perspective, you might want to know about the number of trainings that are available on the different kinds of topics that are offered, or where the library consultants travel, how frequently they come to your area, those kinds of things. We're just surmising at this point. We want to hear from you. When you think about the state library and you want to know more about the work that's going on, how we're spending our state and our federal funds to support library development, how successful we are in that effort. What does that look like? What kinds of data might we be collecting, and how we might we go about reporting that to all of you? We've started thinking about sort of success indicators that might be ongoing metrics that we might have the ability to measure over time that might speak to how successful we are or how healthy we are as an agency. And some of those draft indicators of success are listed here on this spreadsheet. So things like funding, obviously. When we think about library development work, it's important for us to think about the number of libraries that are meeting the standards, the public library standards, or not. Are there some standards that libraries struggle to meet? Are the standards, in fact, truly adequate in demonstrating the value and impact of libraries? We think about the number of library staff, and I should add trustees, that are getting certified as a measure of success for our training programs. The number of qualified patrons of our Talking Book Library program that are actually using the service and what that gap might look like, and so forth. I think that there are a number of different kinds of success indicators that we can tease out or directly measure based on the work of the State Library. I'm currently interviewing the individual State Library commissioners about the kinds of data, the kinds of reporting that they might like to see more of from the staff to help them gauge the success and health of the agency through their lens as a commissioner who is responsible for the financial health and the governing and policy and planning direction for the state agency. What kinds of data and information can and should we be providing to them to make that job easier for them? And so our hope is that we'll have some of that information collected from the commissioners, and then during the conversations with the commission, we plan to gauge that group about how similar their interest in our reporting is to what the Commission's interest is and what else the library community might want to know about the work that goes on at the State Library. As I said, how we're using the resources that come to the State Library to help support library development around the state. So again, this is just intended to sort of prime the pump a little bit. I hope you plan to join us at that session on Thursday. Debbie did confirm it's at 9:30 Thursday morning at the conference. And be thinking about what you'd like to know more about the State Library and come and plan to share some of that information with us. I've said before, the State Library is very, very committed to being a transparent organization in sharing as much information as we can about our work in a way that we hope demonstrates the value of our work, not only so that you're informed about the work that we do, but also so that we can maybe serve as a model for how libraries within the state might think about approaching their own reporting, about communicating the value of the work that goes on within your libraries. I am going to stop there and ask if there are any questions or if you have any feedback or initial thoughts about the kinds of data reporting, questions about the value or the success of the State Library that you might want to know about.
And we'll use the chat box to give people, and wait a second or two, a few seconds for people to type in any comments. It's a lot of reports, Jenny.
It's a whole lot of reports. I feel bad for our staff with all of their reporting that we have to do. And look at all those acronyms. My goodness.
Yeah, that's a lot of acronyms.
Yeah.
Where we're, I think that's just true of every individual industry has their own suite of acronyms. Yes.
Right. Yep.
Not seeing anything coming in. Probably wowed them, and they're probably really reluctant to say, well, I'd really like another report.
Well, you know, and the other thing that that we know is that this is a little about admitting what you don't know about the State Library, and that's fine. We assume, I think, too frequently that you are all familiar with the work that we do, and sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and that's fine too. So we see our reporting and evaluation process as an ever continuing evolution in just trying to be more transparent in our work.
It's pretty much true about humans in general that none of us know what we don't know. We're always surprised to discover what we don't know. Yeah. Part of the learning process.
Well,
so is that?
Yeah, that's the information I wanted to share. Again, reminder about the conversations with Commission. The April Commission meeting itself will also be at the conference. It's going to be Wednesday morning at 10 at the conference. So it's a great opportunity if you've never attended a Commission meeting to sit in and see what work goes on within those Commission meetings as well.
It is a good time to, of course, all those meetings are open to the public and online. We don't get a lot of people attending online, so it's always a good way to just kind of tune in and listen in. But the one at the conference every year is I think a really good one to go and just kind of introduce yourself and say you're interested and learn a little bit more about how that body works. Exactly. It is a very interesting group of professionals that come together for us every other month. So, well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording, and we'll stay online for a few more minutes if you're here live, and if you are tuning in to the recording, you can just check the description, and or you can check the learning portal every month for the date of this webinar. We do it almost every month, sometimes take a little break when there isn't a lot of news to share. So thanks everybody. Thank you, Jenny.
And just a reminder, we will not do one in April because I'll be doing a report at the association conference.
Right. So nothing in April, but we'll probably be back here in May. Great.
Yep.
Thanks.
And I haven't had a photo of my darling niece in a library for a little while, but I did get this photo of her doing a little story time with her kitty that I thought I would share with all of you.
That's pretty darn precious.
My darling niece Elsa, who lives on a ranch north of Big Timber. And so she loves to visit the Carnegie Library in Big Timber as well as the library in Livingston.
Cute.
Cute, cute.
And just one comment in the chat box that I'll read aloud, and that's from Gail Bacon in Belgrade. Thank you for the update. The foundation /nonprofit, for now, just not to be necessarily determined as a foundation, is very exciting. So yeah, look for more news on that. All right, thanks.